But, if I should be driving down the street and some car should just knock, that I'd be okay with that, Lord. If you want my time to be now, then I could be with Jesus and be happy and, not feel this pain.
Those were Jenny's thoughts just 2 years ago, after 25 years of marriage to a man who seemed perfect on paper, an Eagle Scout, a Marine Corps pilot, a devoted father, a man of deep faith. But by year 25, Jenny was so controlling, she couldn't stop herself from asking if he had the hotel room key every single time they left the room. So critical that he told a friend at a dinner party, "It doesn't matter what I do. Jenny's not going to be happy." And then something shifted. At their 27th Thanksgiving in front of 22 family members, including her in-laws, her husband stood up during the blessing and said, "This is the best year of our marriage that we've ever had." What happened between "I don't want to live" and "the best year ever"? That's what you're about to hear. And I promise you, if you've ever felt stuck in a pattern that you can't break, if you've ever wondered whether real change is even possible, Jenny's story will show you it is. Let's listen. My guest, Jenny, felt lonely and disconnected from her husband and struggled with severe depression. When she immersed herself in the intimacy skills, the depression lifted and the connection with her husband came back. She's going to tell us how she did it so you can do it too. Jenny, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. I'm so excited you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the invitation.
Great. Well, let's start from the beginning. What was it that attracted you to your husband? How did you know he was the one?
He was so distinctive, Laura. I mean, when we had our first date, we were actually introduced by a colleague of mine that was a friend of his. And so we met long distance. And this was back before social media and even smartphones. We've been married 27 years in May. So it was a long time ago. And we just hit it off on the phone. Our first conversation, I actually called the colleague. I had lunch with him that day and I said, "I'm so tired of you telling me about this guy, but you never present him." I got home and I checked my answering machine and there's no message. He's like, "Yes, because he's a gentleman and he's not going to meet you on an answering machine. So he's waiting for you to get home. And he keeps calling me, asking me when you're going to be home." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, tell him I'm home." And he called at 11 at night and we talked through the night. We talked until 6 in the morning and then both worked the next day. We had a lot to talk about. You had it on good authority from a mutual friend. This was a good person.
You guys connected immediately. It sounds like you felt really safe right off the bat.
I did. Yeah.
Oh, all right. So then, so you dated, you fell in love, you got married.
Well, it's funny because when we first met, we didn't really feel like this instant attraction. And I actually didn't feel like this response from him. Like I didn't feel like he built me up or built my ego and just kind of gave me that you're what I want feeling. So I did this was probably the first time I looking back that I exhibited control right from the beginning, because I just said, "Well, it was great to meet you. I could tell we didn't quite hit it off. And, it was, we had a lot of fun conversations, but I just don't want you to feel like there's any reason why we have to continue talking." And he agreed at first. So I was waiting for him to say, "No, I felt a connect," but there wasn't anything. But a few days later, he called back and he said, "I've never met anyone like you that will just speak honestly about what's happening instead of pretense that there's no games." So right from the beginning, our relationship was based on the safety of the truth, which is really important to me. Where you say the hard things. And he told me some hard things, even in that first conversation, that he wanted a woman, he wanted to marry someone who could be the CEO, but chose to stay home because he valued family so much that he wanted a woman that I think intellectually he connected with and could engage with, but at the same time recognized that it was important to him to have someone who valued family as much as he did, to the point where career would be second. And, I grew up in a very unstable household. My mom wasn't well mentally. She had a lot of abuse as a child, and she was an addict as a result, alcohol, prescription medication, and so forth. And she just had a really hard life. And um, I thought, I hadn't planned this. Like, I thought I was going to be the CEO. I was working at a Fortune 50 company at the time and I was fast tracking, but I just thought, but I want this. I want my children to have what I didn't have and have that safety. And so, yeah, your way sounds, yeah, I'll try that. I'll try that. So fast forward where we have the children and we have three children. And my first child was born. My first day of maternity leave, I came home and watched 9/11 happen while I was having a cup of tea, 2 days before my son was born. So I thought, because my husband was in the Marine Corps, he was a helicopter pilot at the time, and I thought he was leaving the Marine Corps so that we could move and be with his where all of his family was and have that extended family I never had. I really just threw myself into his rhythms. He grew up with a very strong family of faith. To the point where he asked his mother before we got married, he said, Mom, she thinks she's a Christian, but she's not really following Jesus. She believes in Jesus, but she doesn't read the Bible. She doesn't go to church. And I've got to say now that I am very strong in my faith. If my three kids, if any of them had come to me and said this, I don't know that I would say what she said, but he said to her, I know we're supposed to be equally yoked. And I'm just wondering, what do you think? Because I don't think we are. And she said, I see Jesus in her. And so that was pretty huge of how far his family went to just really love me and accept me from where I was. So in the beginning, it was easy because I was embracing. I wanted to know what's it like and I like this way and this, I mean, Laura, I'm not kidding you. His extended family would get together to be 35, 40 people. And I'm not kidding you. The guitars would come out and Kumbaya would be played. And I'd be like, I am in a movie. Like in my family, 911 was called multiple times when two sisters in particular that, you know, did not get along very well. And here I am just like
As-
watching these people like do this effortless dance of family being together and just loving each other. They very much valued family and faith. And it was very rooted. It was very foundational. And then it made a lot of sense to who he was because he was, I was around a lot of religion in my upbringing, but he walked the walk. He didn't talk to me about his faith. He just lived it. He's the guy that walks down the street and sees trash and picks it up and throws it away. Like that Eagle Scout background was ingrained in him, but just a good citizen. He's a Marine, but not in like all of his fraternity brothers and the Marines and his high school friends, like these three groups kind of converged at our wedding, telling stories about like, have you ever heard him swear? He's like, Gomer Pyle. He'll say like, Dad gummit, and it's just like, yeah, he didn't kiss me on our first date. And he said, I just want you to understand, so you don't take it personally, but I'm waiting until I get married. So I just don't want you to think that. And I mean, I had been married. I had been married before him. I got married right out of college and shocked when my husband left and just said terrible things about never having loved me. And so there could have easily been like abandonment and trust issues. My father left when my mom was, when I was only 2. So I could have easily had like all these issues, of trust. But one thing my ex-husband said to me is, you're a strong woman and you need a strong man. And I realized he told me he felt like a coward because he didn't tell me the things that he needed to say. And so he knew it wasn't my fault because I could never pivot and change or respond to any kind of feedback because it was never given to me. He just pretended, my ex-husband, he just pretended that he wanted to do everything I wanted to do. One day you just find out the marriage is over because this person's been pretending. And I knew why. He had had his father suddenly left the family, and so he wanted to be this good guy, my ex-husband. And so he just kind of gave me this warning. So I was on the lookout for a strong man that could tell me something that wasn't pleasant to hear, but it would be feedback that I could learn and grow and, be better as a result. And I saw that in Ethan early on.
So that created a feeling of safety, and like you could
Yes.
just really relax because you could
Right.
trust. You didn't have to be reading the tea leaves or something to figure out what's going to happen. Well,
Yeah.
he sounds absolutely wonderful. What started to go wrong? What could possibly go wrong in this scenario?
Well, it's so funny because recently he's told me a lot of things. And I think because there is that safety now with the skills, but recently he told me things that I didn't know before. Like I asked him, when did you first think, ooh, I may have made a mistake here? And he said it was when we traveled with your parents. And again, I was an airline employee, so I had these benefits to go to Paris and England for Christmas. And he said, every time we left the hotel room, you asked me, did I have the key? Every time. And, I could still, he just told me this the other day, and it's like it could have just happened yesterday. And it's been like 27 years. But now I understand, of course, with the skills and just the way that you painted the picture so clearly in your book. Now I understand that, I treated him like he was a child. I don't know what happens when someone decides they want to be with you and then you decide, okay, I'm going to rework you now and treat you like I'm your mother. And this is before I can't use the excuse that, well, I had children and I just got into this mothering habit. And, no, we weren't even married yet. It was 6 months before we got married. But it's interesting because he just told me that for the first time. And I was just like, yeah, it's always been, I mean, and these are things I don't even remember, but they left an imprint on him.
Yeah.
And he's just such an optimistic person that, I mean, I always joke him that someone could be stabbing him right from the front and he'll still be like looking for the best in them. He is just a very optimistic person. So I asked him, I was like, did you think, oh, we're not going to make it? He's like, no, I never thought that until like the breakdown, about 2 years ago. Um, but he said that what I always thought was, no, we're going to, based on our faith, we're going to stay married. But I just thought, but I'm going to be miserable. I think it was there all along, and he just has this incredible capacity for joy. So I just think that like he shifts like you teach in your skills with gratitude. He just shifts to the positive so easily. I remember 3 months after we were married, and I remember having this fight, and we just like seemed to have a lot of fights on weekends. And I realized it's expectation. Like you think the weekend is going to be, we're going to do all these adventures and recreational things. And I think I'm going to rest. And we just never talk about that. And then when we're in the midst of it, we're like, no, this isn't what I wanted. Um, so I had done this Franklin Covey course in my corporate position for time management. And there was this quote, and it was, those rip off calendars that you used to have. And there was like a quote of the day, and it said, and I put it on my refrigerator. And for years, this was my mantra. Everybody knew this about me. It was the root of all conflict is the inability to manage expectations. And I thought, well, I don't want conflict, so I will just manage expectations. And now I can look back and just hear the control in that. Because it is true, if you tell people what you want, they have a choice. What it doesn't say is, they may or may not do what you want when you tell them what you want. But I just figured I just have to tell you. Once I tell you, you're going to do what I want. I mean, I just told you what I wanted. So it just never occurred to me, that piece of it. And, but now I look back and I'm just like, oh, wow. But even girlfriends will laugh at me because like I would begin things with, all right, let me manage your expectations. I did it with my children, but I missed the part that I was their authority figure and they had to do what I wanted. I didn't quite make that connection that not everybody had to do what I said. And honestly, I don't think I ever saw it, Laura. I really think I just thought, "Hey, I've told you what you need to do to make me happy. You're not doing it. You're the problem. If you loved me, you would make me feel love, but you don't because you don't spend time with me or you don't come home or you don't." Because really, that safety of Ethan originally telling me things went away. He just withdrew.
Mm.
And he would just make himself happy in other environments. Um, Always honorably. I never had to worry about, I mean, you never say never when it comes to infidelity because, it happens all the time. It's so part of our culture. But I just knew he is such an honorable man and he wants his children to see him as that honorable man. And because of his relationship with the Lord, he's not going to do that. Not to honor me, even though that could be true, but I knew like he wasn't going to do that because he wanted to be an honorable man. So I never really questioned, and our relationship wasn't based on sex. He told me from day one, our wedding night will be the night. And so it was, I never had any insecurity with him because I knew that's not what our relationship is based on. So I felt like I had that emotional connection. And I felt like I could trust him to tell me things. Like I remember 1 month into dating, he told me he loved me and he told me he loved me first. And I don't know if that was the first time that ever happened, but I know that I definitely was more of a pursuer in a relationship before. And so I waited and he told me he loved me and we were driving home. We're on a road trip. And it was just like a beautiful day. Like the music's playing, the windows are down, the sun is shining. It was just like couldn't be better. My man just told me he loved me. Like it was awesome. And he hands me this bookmark from his book. And it says top 10 reasons why I swear. Okay. So I'm reading it and it's very tongue in cheek. It makes my mama proud and it shows off my education and my intelligence. And I'm just like, why is he giving this to me? And so I'm just kind of reading it. And then I just look at him and just say, I don't understand. And he said, you know, sometimes like when you're really attracted to someone, like he said, for instance, say you're in a bar and this really like for me, this really attractive woman walks in and you're like drawn to her and you're watching her and you see her and then she sits down and she puts a cigarette in her mouth. And he's like, and it's just like, that's it. Like that feeling of attraction is just, it's for me instantly gone because I don't enjoy cigarettes. And he said, when you swear, that's how I feel. And I remember saying, why would you do this? Like, why would you tell me right now? Like, we're having this great day and we're having like this fun. And he said, when's a better time to tell you? Like when we're in an argument and you say things that are not kind to say, he's like, I thought you would want to know because I know I would want to know if I did something that was repelling to you, I would want you to tell me. And immediately I heard my ex-husband say, you need somebody in my head. You need someone strong like you who will say the hard things. And I realized like that to me was the confirmation, like this is
This
the
is
man for me.
God.
So fast forward,
Wow.
when you go through 20 years together and those conversations aren't happening anymore. He just isn't there. And it just seemed like after I think it was easier for him when our children were home and before they were teenagers and they still loved, being dad's playmate. Because he would do everything. He would coach. He would be a room parent. He would chaperone, family. He lived it. Family was his priority. And I just think that that probably breathed life into him to balance where I would suck the life out and not even realize I was doing it. But once they left, it just, there was no hiding from it anymore.
Wait, when you say you were sucking the life out of him, what do you
Yeah.
mean? Like,
I mean, that control and the lack of respect. I mean, there's a Christian author that wrote a book called Love and Respect, and we went to a marriage retreat and we heard about it. And you read it, and it makes it very clear. God's word is clear that women should be loved and men need respect. And you've said this so many times that the best aphrodisiac for men is actually respect. And he said that to me. I mean, like anytime, we did go to marriage counseling at various times. And when the question was asked, like, what's the one thing you need from her? If she could do one thing, he would always say, she speaks to me in a very condescending way.
oof,
I would just like to be respected. And so reading your book was not a shock to hear that I had been told this. I just didn't know how to change it.
know how?
I
You didn't
did
know
not
how.
have the roadmap until you gave it to me.
Reading that other book or going to marriage counseling, it still
Yeah,
wasn't clear how to be respectful. And so and you're noticing like he's distant, like all
yeah,
the and that's from like starts pretty early on. Like he's distant, we're disconnected. But when the kids are there, there's a kind of this buffer that makes it like you guys are
right,
still a family, everything's pretty
right.
cool. But once they leave, they grow up and fly the nest. This empty nest is pretty disconnected.
I will say that when they were teenagers, they saw, I'm not proud of what they saw of me. I didn't do a good job protecting them from seeing that mama wasn't happy. Um, that was something I thought about is I felt this real guilt that I was not teaching my boys how to choose a woman that would respect them. I was not teaching my daughter how to respect. Like that was the pain of my heart of
Good
just
to
the
know.
knowledge that, yeah, we could be married, but I just knew the Lord doesn't tell you to be married because you have to. Like everything that the Lord gives you as a boundary and as a guideline is for your good. And I, I didn't want to just be married because like check, we made it to this many. Like I wanted my kids to just go, this is awesome. There was a marriage retreat where one of the authors wrote a book called Sacred Marriage, and he said that the Lord uses marriage for holiness. And I had girlfriends that would say, "Oh, you deserve to be happy." These aren't women that were standing for my marriage. Like, you should leave him and you should, whatever. And when one woman said that to me a couple years ago after we had our breakdown, she was someone I had recently met and I really enjoyed her company and we had a lot in common. But it was like, I was like dead in my tracks when she said this because I was like, oh, you don't really know me. Because I don't feel like my purpose on this earth is to be happy. I feel like my purpose on this earth is to be holy. It's to be more and more like Christ. It's holiness. It sets you apart. The way you treat people sets you apart. I'm not winning at that. I'm losing. And, where are you going to be on a Friday night when I'm alone because you encouraged me to leave my man? You're going to be with your family. Like it's not helpful. It's not, I need someone to stand with me in my marriage. Well, I think that based on what you teach in your book, I think that I reached for the book and I read it wanting to improve a relationship. But what happened as just a natural overflow of using these skills is I learned how to become the best version of myself. which in my biblical worldview for me means holiness. So, in the community, you talk about showing up as the best version of yourself because when you're not dignified, you feel ick. You're wearing the ick that you just lost it. You just let him have it. Like you didn't have the impulse control and you said the thing and I mean, just look in the mirror and look at your face when you're doing that. It's not pleasant. And when it's done to you, when you're the fly on the wall in someone else's marriage and the wife is like criticizing her husband and you're just like, ugh, like everybody in the room feels it. It's not a good thing. No one has to tell you that. You just know it. And so there was just something within me that was just not satisfied. And I didn't know what it was. And I just decided it was because my husband didn't make me happy. So I had a series of difficult years with some really difficult life events that happened. I had a lot of loss all at the same time. My mother died and she had dementia. And so for a long time, she's like that person that she just like my aunt died a couple years before her. And my aunt was the happy drunk who also was the very amicable person with dementia who just did what you said. My mother was the mean drunk. And when she had dementia, she made your life hell and was just very agitated and violent. And just, it was really hard for my stepdad and for me because I'm an only child. And so that was happening. And then meanwhile, my cousin, I was my aunt's caregiver. I went and got her when she had dementia. She lost her house because she stopped paying the bills, all the things that just the worst case scenario that can happen. But her two daughters that had always dealt with addiction and mental health issues, whose father died of drugs and alcohol when he was only 39, she had never created boundaries for them. And so now here she is living with me. And then what happens to her two daughters, my cousins, who were like little sisters to me? I didn't sign up for that responsibility, but because I was the power of attorney for my aunt, I'm now responsible for helping them. So that was there. And then there was the church hurt, which, everyone has a church hurt story, where there's sin that's covered up and, you're supposed to just pretend you don't see it, or, people are on the other side of it and there's no repentance and somebody has to pay. And it was me. It was me that got to pay, because I was witness. And I'm the person that calls it out and goes and talks to the person one-on-one directly. And I was just kind of cast out of the community because they did they didn't want to hear that. So that was it was actually harder for me to deal with that than it was even my mother's death, because I saw my mother's death coming. This I didn't see coming. So basically I lost my community. I lost my purpose because I was a leader. So I led women's ministry. I was a worship leader. So I had that creative self-care, so I had a lot of my needs met in a way that I didn't even realize were happening until it was gone. My cousin died. She was found dead in a hotel room. She was a fentanyl statistic, just accidental overdose. We had 3 Chinese exchange students, and one of them, who was a delightful young man, killed himself. He hung himself with his honor cord. And none of us saw that coming. I mean, it was a lot, Laura. It was a lot. And then meanwhile, my son's graduating and moving on, and my daughter is a year later. And then at the bottom of this, the core foundation of this is, because my husband would always say, you do the big stuff really well. Like because I was always the problem solver in the family, because I was so young and it was not safe. I had to take control to be safe. So it was a survival instinct. And so I was just used to that. And people in my family came to me when they had their mess and they needed me to help walk them through their crisis. And I didn't feel like I was choosing any of this, but what was I going to do? Turn my back on them? They're asking me for help. So I would help them. So he would be marveled by, wow, like, I don't know how you're dealing with all of this. But he was like, but it's the small stuff that you don't do so well at, where you lose it over the smallest little thing. And um, so I was just kind of taking this all in. But when I'm processing all this grief, what I realized is Hollywood taught me that my husband would complete me. And Hollywood lies. And I honestly, it's funny because we punish men for having a pornography addiction because, they should have self control and not have that. But I honestly think romantic comedies are pretty much emotional porn for women. It teaches you a lot of things that are not true, and it sets up a lot of expectation. And I feel like a lot of the expectations I had from my husband, I think they're from Hollywood. I think they're from years of watching movies where the woman got what she wanted. She said it and he gave it to her. Maybe there was a struggle because she needed some conflict, but he got there and he gave her what she wanted. And that happy ending wasn't coming for me. I wasn't, my husband wasn't meeting that need of like being my emotional support during all this hard stuff. Now, if you ask me to drop and give me 10, like you do in your coaching, and you had me list out all the gratitudes, there is a ton that he was doing to support me. But all I could focus on is that I felt this hole in my heart and he wasn't filling it. And that's all I could see. Like, that is all I could see. The fact that he was an amazing provider, that he loved his family and put his family first in everything he did. Um, that he is the guy that's like the adrenaline junkie, fun guy that like would get you out of your pattern of just monotony and like do the fun things that people don't do in life. You take risks and try new things and um, just, he's good looking. He took care of his body, just like all the things that you would want. But it was like, it wasn't enough. I was not pleasable. And that was a key. My friend who's a counselor, she has very good boundaries of not being my counselor. But this one time she knows how much I value truth. I had my girlfriends over for my birthday and Ethan was making dinner for me. My friend said, "Oh, Ethan, you better get this or Jen's not going to be happy." And he said, "It doesn't matter what I do. Jen's not going to be happy." And she told me that a while later, and it hit me like a ton of bricks just between the eyes. I was like, because I knew it was true. I knew it was true.
It resonated.
But again, I still didn't know how to fix that. Like, I really thought, well, you know what? I remembered something that a marriage counselor, it was a pastoral counselor from our church when we first got married, when we were having all those arguments about our different expectations for weekends. He asked Ethan in the beginning, like, what's the one thing? And at that time, it wasn't the condescension. It was, I just hate that she goes negative about everything because he's such a positive person. And I remember I felt so affirmed because the pastoral counselor said she had Chicken Little for her mother, like telling her the sky was going to fall. And oftentimes it did. Like she would say in the middle of the night, I don't know where we're going to live tomorrow. And like that might actually happen. Like she grew up with the worst case scenario happening. So it's a defense mechanism for her to think of the worst case scenario and then go kind of work her way back to the middle to kind of calm herself down that she can handle the worst case scenario. And so he basically gave him a reason to have grace for me. I think that helped Ethan a lot for a long time, but I also think that it gave me an excuse to say, this is who I am, and that I can't change it. This is what I grew up with this, and this is what I do, and this is my behavior. I had no accountability that I could change that. And I think it's because down deep, like, even though I wanted to, I just didn't know how. And I really thought that my faith would help me with that. Like, I would just pray about it and I would just, ask the Lord to make me better. And, I really thought that that would help. And I think it did to some degree because, I mean, my husband is so amazing that I could just be grumpy with him. And I'm not kidding you, Laura. He will look at me and say, how can I serve you today? Like in the midst of
Married to the
being,
saints.
and it would
Huh.
like humble me immediately. And I'd be mad at him that he has this capacity to rise above no matter how I'm treating him. It would humble me, but at the same time, I'd be envious that I can't do that. Like, I wish I could. And I really, I didn't think I'd ever get there. Quality time is my love language. You know, I read the book our pastor told us to read, and I was just like, um, you know, and words of affirmation were his. And I was, you know, not meeting his need either. And, you know, and he would tell me, I'd hear that word condescending. And then as my boys were getting older, I would hear I would hear them use that word, that I was condescending.
Ugh,
And so I started to feel the
ouch.
cost was going beyond. It was like around the time that my mother died and this church hurt was happening, and my cousin died, and our exchange student died, and my kids were leaving the nest. I mean, to me, it was almost like the Lord was, He needed to teach me to just depend on Him instead of looking to my husband to be my happiness. Like I had to surrender. And, you know, so I wasn't surprised at all when I read your book that I learned that you had another book called The Surrendered Wife, because I was like, yeah, that it really was a surrendering. Um, and then the power came after that, right? Of after the surrender, then you have the power. So I learned that once I learned more about your skills, but I I was kind of alone and I was having conflict with a lot of people. Then I never had conflict before because, you know, I managed their expectations so they could give me what I wanted. But I was suddenly like surrounded by a lot of people having conflict with me. And it was very lonely and isolating. And I felt like justified in my behavior. And if you would just listen, I can explain it to you so you understand, you know. And the more I talked and the more words I used, the more repelling I was.
And I hear
I was
like
definitely stuck.
you struggled with depression, you said.
The depression at that point was overwhelming. At that point, when I felt this loneliness um, and I think it was because I realized, okay, well, if my kids are gone, I no longer have all these external things that give me a structure of a day. There's no school anymore to get them to. There's no sports to, you know, there's no structure anymore. And I'm an entrepreneur. So this, and at the time I was in a business with my husband and I did not want to be in the business. After my kids left the nest, I realized that I lost myself somewhere along the way. I was yielding to his way because it looked like a better way to live than the way I had grown up, and I wanted that better way for my children. But it's like I didn't realize how much I was compromising for myself. You know, I moved to his town. I went to his church. I vacationed 5 times a year with his family. Um, I, I wanted to go back to work, and he said, well, let's build a business together. I've always wanted to do this business. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and we need you in our business, you know, because he would, you know, he told me what brought me together with him was my intelligence and my honesty. And he could always talk me into it, you know, like he could always, because I would always think, well, maybe he sees something I don't see. And I thought, well, you know, it would give me something to do. And I do like to build things. I don't really like to operate them, but I do like to build things. And I'm great galvanizing people and casting vision and putting systems together so they work. So I'm like, yeah, I could do that. And now I'm in this business, and instead, I am the accountability partner I didn't ask to be. Employees, vendors, customers telling me all the things Ethan wasn't doing and how I needed to, you know, make him do it, you know. And so that dynamic was obviously not helping.
Uh,
And so I realized that before I read your book, I had told him, I can't stay in this business anymore. It's not good for our marriage. I would rather live in a 1-bedroom apartment and be married to you than have this awesome house on the river and all the things and be miserable. And so I left the business, but I had no idea what I was going to do now. I needed a reason to get out of bed every morning. And it was during that time that I was so depressed. And I remember thinking, like, I considered suicide. I thought about it. I was like, I have no hope for the future. It's not going to get any better. But I couldn't write that story for my children. I did not want that. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, I'm not going to kill myself. But, if I should be driving down the street and some car should just knock, I'd be okay with that, Lord. If you want my time to be now, then I could be with Jesus and be happy and, not feel this pain that I was feeling. And it was dark. I honestly, I just didn't believe I could ever be happy again, that there would be any joy, that there would be any, and I read the Bible, so I know that the joy comes from the Lord, and people in very difficult circumstances, I've watched it happen, have the ability to be joyful in their suffering. I've seen it. I know it's possible. And then that made me feel even worse. Like, I'm not even
yeah,
a good Christian. I can't
yeah,
even deal
that's
with the
right.
suffering.
Yeah.
It's like my strength is from the Lord. Why isn't it working? Like I just didn't see a way. And so it was around that time that one of my pastors who was on a team who led a team that I was on, a prayer team, I had told him that I had this opportunity. It was a job opportunity. It was in a large city, and it would help me to get back into that corporate job that I was in before. I was like, if I don't learn how to make myself happy, I'm going to die. Like, I've got to figure out how to make myself happy. I know I can't change him and make him come home and spend time with me. I don't feel good in his presence. I don't feel good in my children's presence. Like, when you're the worst version of yourself, you don't want an audience. And I didn't know the answer, but I knew something had to shift because I was stuck. And so my pastor said, would you be open to seeing a counselor? And I was like, oh, sure. I've seen lots of counselors over the years. And he's like, well, I know this woman who is on our staff here. And I didn't even know the church had a counselor on staff. Well, we really did hit it off. And I saw her once a week for a year. And 1 month in, she had to have a surgery, and she handed me The Empowered Wife. And the first chapter of The Empowered Wife, spoiler alert for those who are listening that haven't read it, basically is, marriage counseling doesn't work. And here's someone who counsels people saying, here, read this book. So she said, you're going on a cruise. You're going on this cruise with your girlfriend. You're wanting a book to read. And I have a friend from graduate school when we got our counseling master's degrees, and she doesn't normally recommend books. And so it got my attention when she said, you've got to read this book. It is transformative. And so she started reading it and just thought of me. And so she gave me the book. And so I read the book on a cruise, a 5-day cruise with my girlfriend. And we would read a chapter and then talk about it at our next meal, and then read a chapter and read it. I do remember reading it, and it was like, I kept saying to my counselor, this Laura Doyle has secret sauce, and I can't put my finger on it. But it's like, part of it is her humor and the self-deprecating way she shows you that you're controlling without telling you you're controlling, because she tells you about herself and her own mistakes. And I was like, I know that's a big part of it. I was like, but there's more. It's one of those things you could just read it as a reference book over and over again. And I was just like, but I'm not in the community. And so, like, the year went by, and it was like book went up on the shelf. I told some, oh, I know what it was. I gave someone in my family who was having struggles in their marriage the book. And so I didn't have it to reference. And so I just stopped referencing it and stopped thinking about it. And then that familiar pattern of withdrawal from my husband and just not feeling alone, and the job opportunity, they ended up restructuring and took the job off the and never did. So there was no job that was going to fix me and distract me from the problem. I actually was going to get to solve the problem. So I went on a cruise with my husband to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary. And our anniversary was it was almost our 26th anniversary, but I just said, we're doing so much better. And I hate that we didn't mark it. We didn't even, I went to visit my son in another city on our 25th wedding anniversary, just so I wouldn't be disappointed when he didn't come home and we'd have dinner together and just say, happy anniversary. It just hurt too much. And we were doing better because of the mind shift with the skills. It still wasn't in me, but it was like I knew enough where when I was misbehaving, I could kind of tweak. And so we get back from the cruise and I was like, all right, I, I'm struggling with unforgiveness. Like all I ever think about is how he's letting me down. Like I can't, and my counselor had told me that. She was just like, this is not who you are. You're a strong woman of faith. And when I see you in every other context, she's like, but in this one, like, when are you going to let your husband off the hook? Like, when are you going to forgive him that he's not perfect? And like, are you perfect? And I knew I wasn't. And I just couldn't let it go. I was like, how do I let it go? Even my son, my young adult son, when I went to visit him in the large city, we were having this walk and just having a brilliant time. And I said, so tell me about that mindset stuff you talk about. Like when you are like, when you have negative thoughts, you talk about, you just let it go. I'm like, tell me more. He said, well, it's kind of like you just see this thing floating by and you just observe it. It's negative. It doesn't make you feel good. And then you just let it go. I was like, yeah, go back to that part. How do you just let it go? Like, I can't let it go. He's very scientific in addition to being incredibly artistic. Like he's got a lot of gifts. And he just said, well, it's kind of like the law of attraction. And it's what you've taught me on what you focus on grows. And the coach community is so good about reinforcing that. But he just said, if you make a conclusion that something negative is going to happen, that's what you're going to see. You're literally willing all of that evidence to come forward, and you're going to see see, I was right. See, I said he's late all the time, and see, he's late all the time. And it was well before it was before I read the book. So it was before I put together the SFPs, and I didn't have a positive spouse fulfilling prophecy. All of my spouse fulfilling prophecies were negative. And I just appreciated his wisdom. And he was 23 at the time, maybe 22 even. And I was just like, I want to be more like him. And I just recognized the way he showed up also. People of all types and backgrounds are attracted to my son. He's just very non-judgmental, just very accepting of people. He sees you. Like I could have conversations with him. I was like, I used to have conversations like this with my husband. What happened? Like, why doesn't he accept me and go to this level of depth with me in conversation like Wright does, my son? And I just realized I needed to be in this community that you talked about in later editions of your book. And so I went to your website. I'm like, all right, how do I get these girlfriends that stand for my marriage? I don't think you put your number in the book anymore where people can call you because it's been 25 years and surely by now that number is disconnected because there's just too many people. And then I read how, I think it was a blog post of yours about how at some point you like disconnected the number and like, make it stop. I can't help all these people. And then somebody came to you and said, you should be building a coaching organization. And then, the rest is history. But I did the master class that I heard about on the website and learned about Ridiculously Happy Wives. And what really got me is, there was a limited period I could try it. And if it wasn't for me, I could cancel it. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this and then not get on every day and experience this in 12 days or 20, whatever it was. I'm going to know whether or not I want to do this or not. And I'm going to commit fully over the next, so many days. Every coaching call there is, I'm going to listen. And so that's how it started. And I, I can't imagine living my life without this community. So it was a real easy switch a couple months later. My husband, right then, like he immediately noticed a change in me. Immediately. You're just a lot more positive to be around.
Ah,
And that's what my husband said. To this day, he'll say the main thing that stuck was that I didn't just go negative. I let go of it all. And immediately I started noticing, like, when I expressed my desire to have a clutter-free foyer before guests came, I would have a clutter-free foyer before guests came. What I've told a lot of other people when I give them the book and tell them, okay, this isn't enough. You need to be in the community. I tell them it's immersion. But what I realized when I decided to become a coach and join the coaching certification, the immersion was like even deeper. It literally is just refocusing with gratitude and learning to take care of myself with self-care, with the things that really bring me joy, not things that I feel like I have to do, but things that I want to do. And, seeing that my husband isn't going to want to meet any of my desires and show up as my hero if I stomp on him, like, and treat him and create an environment where I'm this prickly porcupine. Like, if I don't show him respect, I'm not motivating him to want to show up as my hero, because that man in the kitchen was my husband just a few years ago that said, nothing I do is going to make Jen happy. And now he'll do anything I ask because he knows it's going to make me happy because
What?
I'm pleasable. I receive it and I
Yeah.
thank him for it and I appreciate it. And I just like, I'm just like, it's like we each have a cup that's empty and we start by just pouring a little bit. It's like, for me, it was that balm in the community just to fill a little bit. It's just to give me some motivation to take another step in front of the other. And it's just amazing. And then it's just like more and a little more. And then I thank him and then he thanks me. And then he says, oh, you want me to, and then I apologize. Oh, you don't have to apologize. It's not disrespectful. It's absolutely it's, of course you would want to know this. I want to know how you feel. It's just like this back and forth starts happening again. And you realize that feminine, masculine thing you talk about in the receiving chapters. I realized I did really well in the corporate world because I was bringing that masculine energy and I got it done. I made it happen. I made those people do what I wanted to do because I told them what my expectations were. And and yeah, I thought they all loved me, right? Because they had to. I was their boss. But but once I didn't pay the people and there were a lot of people around me that didn't like me at all, and that did not feel very good. Then I realized, okay, there's something I'm doing wrong here. And now I know I lost the girlfriend energy. And I realized women say this all the time. He doesn't take me out anymore. He doesn't date me. He used to date me and then we had kids and now he doesn't date me anymore. I'm like, and then I realized, like, my husband didn't stop taking me out to dinner because he forgot how to date me. It's like I wasn't pleasable. I didn't receive gifts well. He did something for me. I told him he did it wrong and here's the right way to do it. It's just like, why would you bother? Why would you try? So I just realized, oh, I just lost the feminine energy, that girlfriend energy, that girl of fun and light. It just, where did she go? And instead of focusing on how he's not the guy I married and doing those things he did that drew me in, I realized, no, I'm not the girl. I'm not the girl. I did a bait and switch. I I am not the girl that
Oh,
and it's because I had the reserves of self-care. It's because I heard other women taking accountability in the community. You first with the book, but then the other coaches and then other women. It's like it's magnetizing when other people do it, and you can see it when other people do it. You're drawn to it. And so it all starts with, yeah, that's me. And that accountability of, hmm, I wasn't really fun to be around. You just start noticing people's faces when you speak, and you're like, ooh, and so I can't thank you enough for writing the book and not stopping there, because you could have stopped there. You could have been like, I taught you. I interviewed these women. I got their things. I put a framework together. So make it easy. I gave you the roadmap. What else do you want from me? But you realize that you did not have these patterns of behavior yourself. And if you wrote the book and you couldn't implement it without help of a community to keep you accountable, then who could? And so I'm just so grateful that you built this community and all the women that have come alongside you to say, okay, I can do this, Laura. You may not know how to do this, but I know how to do this. Oh, I know how to do this. And next thing you know, it's like this global coaching organization. And women, I love getting on a call and like I see Dark in the background because she's in Australia and that one is in Dubai and this one is in Jerusalem and this one is in California. And it's just like, they might all look different. They might have different belief systems with their faith. They might have, a different outfit that they wear every day that looks different than mine. But we all are the same, that we want this connection with our spouse and we don't have it. And we can't figure out why. And then we start to see, oh, it's because I'm disrespecting my husband. It's because I'm all over his paper. It's because I'm not pleasable. And it's just like you start to see it because you're helped by all these other women. And so, yeah, once you have it, you want other people to have it too.
Well, you are definitely just an incredible, beaming, glowing example of what's possible. And I love hearing your joy. I love seeing your girl of fun and light, that it's all about this singing and dancing now instead of, I'm watching the Macy's Day Parade in the morning because
Yeah.
that makes me happy.
I asked myself, what do I want?
I want to watch the parade. And it is so attractive. It is so magnetic. And I can really see, just in this conversation, like why your husband finds that so magnetic as well. So, congratulations. What an incredible transformation. And it just sounds like you feel so much more at ease with who you are as a person too. Like wherever Jen goes, like you're going to be.
My son, I asked him what he noticed about me because he had said before you saw things as you felt they were, and now you see them as they really are. And I'm just
Wow.
like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you're just much more open to possibilities of reasons and intentions, whereas before you already decided. And that was really based on your emotion. It's based on how you felt. And it's almost like really like the scales have just come off. It's like I can see things I couldn't see before.
And so, which brings me to this, now that you've got these new perspectives and you can see things that you couldn't see before, and your husband is magnetized to you, and you are not waking up thinking, if a car hits me and I die, like, okay, I'll be with Jesus. Like,
Yeah.
eh, what is and it sounds like your relationships with your children have transformed as well,
They have.
from the conversations you're describing. What is something you'd say to a woman who is where you were, where she's just feeling like the disease of loneliness is
Yeah.
overwhelming her and it's too painful to even go on? What should she do?
I think I'd start by saying, I know what it feels like to be hopeless. I know how empty it feels to be surrounded by people and feel invisible and not heard and just so lonely and wondering, is it always going to be this way? but you're not alone. A whole community of women. There are so many of us out there that are just like you. And we just want to invite you to take our hand and we'll show you how to take the steps forward so that you can be on this journey with us. Because what I love most about this community, Laura, is you don't say, I've arrived. I'm now this perfect wife and I can teach you how to be a perfect wife too. There's nobody in this community that pretends that we have it all together. We're just a community of women that are doing far better than we were doing. And we're experiencing so much joy and we're able to share that with other people so that we can multiply it so that they can experience it too.
What would you say to Jen if you could go back in time and tell her what you know now?
Well, I'd want Jen to find the skills sooner. Given that you wrote the book when my first child was born, Jen! It was a counselor that gave me the book anyway, which I just think is so ironic because not only that a counselor gave me the book when she knows the first chapter says how whoever benefited from marriage counseling. I mean, what man wants to hear all this complaint for, however long? She also said, once you become a coach, I have a lot of women that I'm going to refer to you because I want to focus on people who have trauma and counsel them with their trauma. Because I really firmly believe that it's not counseling, but coaching with these skills that's going to help these women. And so she even saw that well before I did. When I told her I was thinking about being a coach, she just kind of knowingly were like, I was just waiting for you. Just a self-discovery of figuring out that's what your next step was. But really for me, it's just that I would have wanted to find it sooner. And because everything I just said that I would say to a woman is what I would say to myself, that it doesn't have to be this way. And it does get better. And you don't have to feel overwhelmed that you don't know what to do first. This community will show you, this community will walk you through. And I love that. And I love that it's not just like to teach, like, here's the steps, but just to live life in this community and just to be, on days where you just need someone to breathe life into you and remind you that your husband is a good man. Let's look for evidence of that. And you just start crying and realize, yeah, I was just in a funk. It's probably because this person in my life just died. And then suddenly you can see, and you just needed a little help. So I've never had trouble accepting help because I've always known that I need it and I don't mind asking for it. But I know that there are people that just have like a pride in that and they won't accept help. I would just tell myself to find the book sooner because then I'd have 25 more years than I have now to help other women to not be in that place where they're at an intersection wondering if a car is going to crash into them and their misery can be finished.
Well, it's just incredible, Jen, to hear about all that you've accomplished and how you've changed your whole world, which has changed, of course, your whole family's world and made it more joyful and so much happier that you're so pleasable that you have these kinds of conversations now where your kids say, "Oh yeah, mom, you're so different. You seem happy." And of course, that's got ripple effects and now you're going to be paying that forward as a coach, and showing other women that may have really felt the depth of despair, that they can do the same thing. I want to give you my Best Wife Award.
Thank you.
Congratulate you.
I accept. I received that.
You so richly deserve this because it's not easy, right? There's a lot of pain. There was a lot of pain, and it was the going on this journey required so much courage and so much accountability, so much willingness to face that pain and decide to do it a different way. So I just loved your stories about how you did it. And I love getting to hear the before and after about
Thank
your
you.
family, about your home. It's very inspiring. It's going to give me a spring in my step for at least a few days.
Thank you so much for the opportunity and
Thank
for writing this book. It changed my life, Laura. It truly changed my life.
If you related to Jenny, if you care deeply about doing the right thing and still feel unsure how to move forward in your marriage, The Empowered Wife has helped hundreds of thousands of women practice humility, connection, and respect in a way that restores closeness at home. It's not about fixing your husband or forcing outcomes. It's about choosing a path that aligns with your values and creates peace in your heart and in your marriage. You'll find a link to the first chapter of The Empowered Wife that you can read for free in the show notes.